I feel like everything I'm going to say in the next few minutes has already been said by actual application for this one. So I think you're going to see a few quotes because I haven't had any slides. It's not really. My job here is to talk about where this is going, at least from our perspective, sitting in Dundee, and also software. So I'm going to show you a couple slides, and okay, so Google that thing with formatting and so. Talked about this before. It's been great to see all of the work in many of these different areas. We haven't talked a lot about this. There's a bit of an undercurrent. This is obviously key, and this morning's discussion about engagement is incredibly important. No one has come to me and said you should strike off one of these from the list, and no one has come to me and said, "Oh, and you forgot whatever." And so at least that list seems like it's working. So the this idea that there are these many different types of people and entities, and as John mentioned, this inspired by local problems, because these are the things we're trying to solve, but with this mindset of working more globally. And again, I think the experience in particular of RFC5 has been incredibly instructive, that we actually have to take this quite seriously and understand, talk about what that balance is. We won't anticipate everything, obviously, but then keep that in the back of our minds. So, John, thank you. So I was thinking about where OME is going. Just we've been at this for these 25 years. So a few stories, so here I'm quoting from Sean and John things that they said in their talk. The one counter I would say, and this leads to story number one, not working alone, but also respecting the fact that our partnerships will be a little bit fluid and they will change, and that's just as natural as our needs change. But where did OME start? Way back circa 2000, 2001. I knew Peter Sorger. Peter Sorger had a grant with Bob Murphy. Some of you know that name. Some of you know Bob, and some of you will know Peter, and some of you will know Bob. In Peter's lab was Ilya Goldberg, and he was in his lab for a few years, and he moved to the NIH, the National Institute of Aging, and that was where OME started. Now, the reason highlighting the MIT CMU or the Sorger Murphy thing was both of them said that they were the first to fund OME. I could never get straight what was actually going on, whose grant it was, who was doing the work, etc. It was my job to kind of mediate between them and try to figure out ways to get everyone to work together.
What does that sound like? Yeah. What does that sound like?
It was challenging at times, but it was also incredibly instructive, because Ilya had the idea that, and he was committed to this, that there would be a data specification and there would be software that was written against that specification, and that's how we would work, and we would hold to that. And he was, he drove that idea and made that happen. Some of you know, few of you are old enough to know that the software we wrote was something called the OME server. It was a Perl application. Josh cut his teeth on that. We started working on that in around 2001, I think. And I was fortunate enough to get a grant from the Wellcome in the UK to fund work on that application and to continue developing it. from circa 2002 to 2005. Around 2004, we had to think about renewing that. And so, and I have to say, this was in the bar, I'll tell you about the application. There were a lot of really interesting concepts in there, dynamic databases, et cetera. In preparing the grant submission for the renewal of the funding, Josh, who is the student of staff?
It's Tim.
Yeah, there was a graduate student at Stanford who had been working with the OME server. And
Bisque.
what's that?
The one who went to Bisque with the.
No. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'll try to remember the person's name, but he wrote to me and he said, I've been reading your code for 6 months and I think I finally understand what you guys are doing. This is a really brilliant application. You guys are so amazing. I just thought we're completely sunk because it takes, this, I'm doing this person a disservice because brilliant student, the graduate student. But if it takes 6 months of someone reading Perl code to understand what the hell you're doing, project is going nowhere. And that was the basis for us to re-examine where we're going, and that was that and several other things that we were seeing was the foundation for looking at a different direction to go. That's led by Josh, Jean-Marie, and Chris Allen, who I'll mention here in a second. I want to say that we were working together, but the decision to go a different direction led to some pretty potent conversations, and this was circa 2005, and so it's just the first usage of of Skype. And I had several very late night international phone calls with Ilya screaming at me, literally screaming and swearing at me. How can you possibly do what you're doing? So alone, definitely not. Working together, definitely, but also understanding what each other's motivations are and where we're going. Second story, OME meetings. I told you the story of moving from Dundee to Paris. That was incredibly successful and very grateful for Spencer Short and his team. The reality of scheduling, sometime after the winter holidays, early January, one of our team members, June Matthew, would come to me and say, we need to schedule the OME meeting. Be like, okay, look at the calendar, trying to find dates. And we pick some dates. We call Pasteur and we institute Pasteur in Paris, and we would say, how about now? That was how formalized it was. I have to say, I'm just over the moon that someone is willing to have the level of commitment a look ahead a year. Some of you know who are involved in the European community. The OME meeting has actually now a very formalized process whereby at every meeting, teams come for 2 years, I think 2 years in advance. Which is great given, that's a meeting that's 350 or 400 people. So obviously you need that. So this is a great, move. I'm so happy to see it. We use these meetings for outcomes. The outcomes were, what are we doing? Where should we focus? I told you a story about Martin Spitaler saying, OME is a great idea, it just doesn't work. If you fix it and start making it work. And so, that kind of feedback. Last year, we used the OME meeting to decide on a challenge, which became the NGFF challenge. And so come back to this in a second, but here's a question to us. What's the challenge for this year? What do we need to do? Let's say I really liked Graham's ideas about search and integration. Okay, story 3, OME governance, or lack thereof. The way we run OME for a very long time, every Friday, 11 o'clock UK, there's a call with Josh, Jean-Marie, Chris Allen, who runs Glencoe Software, and me. And we talk about what we're doing. Not very formal, not transparent, not anything that you can actually write or we'd ever really want to write down, to be honest. And that has to evolve. Okay. And so Virginie some of the points you were just making were so great. And there's going to have to be a way to maintain the communication, but have the people who are committing resources have those conversations. I'd love to see that go forward. Which brings me to the penultimate story. And this is this art of having the discussions and trying to find points of alignment, not insisting that everybody commit all of the time on all different threads, but trying to find those opportunities. Examples of those opportunities, meeting Shuichi several years at a meeting where I saw, oh gosh, this is somebody who's thinking like us and interested in working together. That's a great opportunity. Another one, which is kind of, there's a bit of an emotional issue. Some of you know Gianluigi Zanetti, who is a brilliant computer scientist from Sardinia, who came to the meetings at the Institut Pasteur for several years and took a marrow and turned it into a genomic data management system. So the reasons for doing that have to do with fraternity in Italian societies. But it was amazing. It was incredible to see how someone thinking and working and saying, okay, I've got my goals, I'm going off in this other direction, but I want to find ways to connect. And so that has been the art of what we've been trying to do for 20 years, but understanding that there won't ever be complete alignment. Okay, all of us are working in many different institutions. And actually, I think what's interesting now, as opposed to say 20 years ago, because 20 years ago is a fairly homogeneous environment for funding. There were grants, there were small groups, we did research. Now we have much larger institutions, much larger projects. It's going to be much more complex to make those connections. Okay, let's try and figure it out. And finally, I just wanted to add this last point, storytelling. A comment. I think we do a really crap job of saying why our work is so important. Why does it really matter? This gets to what Virginia was just saying. So that I tacked this on, Virginia, so thank you for bringing this up. Why is fair? Why? What the hell? Who the hell cares about fair data? Honestly. Stuff up does. But we can communicate with words like that. We understand what we're saying. Yep. But can we communicate that to people who say, okay, Alex? Alex, why does fair data matter?
Not entirely sure.
Okay. Yeah. So how are we going to change the world with fair data? I think we can't take these messages for granted. So what are the key problems we can solve with the work we're doing? In this room, it's fine, obviously. We're speaking, we have a semantic, we understand. But we're really going to have to do a better job because the scale of what we're doing, I'll just say we never imagined that we would be talking about public data resources at the scale at that time. We thought we were, I'll just tell you, the problem we thought we were solving was a lab level problem with 3D data sets, 512 by 512 by 64, maybe by 10 time points. That's what we were thinking about. We thought that would be the scale of it. It's clear that these things times have moved on. So I really do think we're going to have to be much better at that. So those are where my ideas about where we need to go. What I would like to do over the next, I guess, day and a half, really it's a day now, is ask that question: what's a viable challenge for us? And I want to say, I think it's fine. It doesn't have to be for all of us. It would be great if that worked out. We've heard several ideas. Personally, I think somewhere, as I said, I was inspired by Graham's comment around some of the search and capabilities at BFF. And you see these themes running through several talks. That does seem to be a problem in, I'm thinking about, to be honest, I'm thinking about, storytelling to grant funding agencies, not just our own in the UK, but well, this seems to have resonance. So that's just an idea. But I just encourage us to have this conversation. we'll get everything decided or written down in the next several hours. An open invitation to help drive that. From experience, so, and maybe Josh, I don't know if you want to reflect on this. Inevitably, there's a question of, well, what do quote we want to do, and then who's actually going to do the work? And that's a really important part of what we need to do. It's okay to be an interested observer. That's fine, actually. But just understand that an interested observer is someone in that role. But we still need people, as we know, to do real work. And it's amazing to see, you know, where we've come over the last, whatever it is, 12, 18 months even. But, you know, can we make equivalent steps so that, say, next year, we're all looking back and saying, look, understand. Thank you so much. It's amazing to see all of you. And I want to say finally, we've been having these meetings since I think 2005. It's amazing to see so many new faces. And thank you all for who've joined us for the first time. It's really great to see. Look forward to more. The shop. All right.